No one loves the United States of America more than I do, all right? A pleasant good day, everyone. Hope all is well. Today, we will be talking about the Constitution of the United States of America. I've been reading the Constitution recently and the other documents surrounding it, like the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Association, all of that, because I'm really into it. I think everyone should be really into it. Doesn't matter if you're an American or not, it's one of those documents that's historical. So I think the way I want this video to go is I'm going to talk about the context behind how the Constitution was made because it's very important. And then I'm going to talk about why I like the Constitution because no one loves the Constitution more than I do. No one loves no one loves the United States of America more than I do, all right? Okay, so we know that the United States, well, before it was the United States, the 13 colonies, the OG states like New Hampshire, New York, Pennsylvania, all of those, they were British colonies. And they were essentially like British outposts in the New World in North America. And so, initially at this time, around the early 1700s and prior to that, the Americans who were on the new Americans, they were basically just considered British and they considered themselves British too. And the British kinda considered them British, but we'll go on to that. And then we go back. 1688 onwards, I have my notes here if you're wondering. There was a lot of trade between the British mainland and also the New World, North America. And that really, because once you have trade together, you have a lot of cultural exchange. That really made the Americans feel more British too, and they were becoming extremely British. Keep in mind, at this time, uh, Britain, in terms of the government, were still very much in control of America, as in, like, governors would come from the British mainland and they would preside over the colonies. And America wasn't in any kind of formal agreements and union with each other. Like, the states just acted as independents. And of course, because they're close together and they're all British, there's some interaction between them, but there's no real formal union at this time. And then, uh, 1760, King George III became the King of Britain. And he's very, very important to the beginning of America. I guess he was who caused the downfall of Britain. Not really the downfall. He was who caused the falling out, the big falling out between Britain and the 13 colonies. King George III. Because he was tyrannical. And as I said previously, there was a status quo where there was a lot of trade, and how the trade worked was the United States wasn't like the other colonies, and because colonies like India and Africa, the British would just go and said, "All right, you're my slave now. Whoosh, whoosh, okay, you're my slave. I will take everything, and I will be the superior class, and all the other locals will be the lesser class." It wasn't like that in North America. It was more like it was British. The British had influence over America through trade and also through governance, in that they had control and they really made the laws. However, King George III really wanted to consolidate power and make it a more centralized government. So he changed the status quo where America would pay more taxes, that they saw him as tyrannical. He did a lot of taxes on tea, and he did a stamp tax which a stamp tax really is seen as an unnecessary tax because he's not providing any value. He's just charging any kind of government paper that you need a stamp on it. They had to get money there. And he also stopped the trade between North America, as in the 13 colonies, and people in the Caribbean that were controlled by the French and the Spanish. That's where the merchants got a lot of their money. And at this time, Britain and France and Spain, they're all enemies. Basically, France, Spain versus Britain. So he didn't want that. However, the people in the 13 colonies, it was a mutually beneficial deal to trade with the Spanish and with the French. And this is where the no taxation without representation comes in, because all of the laws basically came from the British mainland, and then it was just forced on the people in the colonies. They didn't really have a say in the matter. And King George III was so primary in the reasons why America decided they wanted to not be British anymore, that if you read the Declaration of Independence, it's basically like a complete diss track of King George III. They named him. I'll read a little bit of it for you. Let's see. Okay, so this is an excerpt from the Declaration of Independence. It says, "The history of the King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let the facts be submitted to the candid world." And then it went off and list a bunch of things that he did allegedly. "He has refused to assent to the laws, the most of the whole. He has forbidden. He has refused. It's all he has. So the Declaration of Independence was really like a letter to the rest of the world that our hand has been forced. We have to leave the British because the King George has been very abusive to us. And keep in mind, at this time, the Americans still really felt British, such to the extent that in some of the documents they wrote that the British on the mainlands, our cousins or our brothers, they refuse to help us. Like they see the way that the king treats us on these unfair laws that he places on us, and they're just complacent with it. So that's what really led to them leaving. Okay. And then in 1774, because keep in mind, as I said, the 13 colonies aren't really organized into any kind of formal union. The first big document that led to the Constitution, I will talk about the Constitution, just wait, it's the topic of the video, was the Article of Association. It was like different people, different guys, representatives from each of the states, the 13 colonies, came together in a Congress, and it essentially is, well, what the document actually says is that it bars them from trading with the British mainland and accepting certain goods from the British mainland, because King George III really went after trade and was taxing too much. So they're like, we're not going to tolerate this. We're going to have an embargo against trade from the mainland. But what this also did, not just, in barring trade with the mainland, is that it was the first kind of, pardon me, I got a notification. What this also did, aside from buying trade from the mainland, it was the first kind of formal governance of the 13 colonies where, because keep in mind, you still had the colonial governments, but they're saying we're going to govern ourselves now. And if you actually read the document, it states that it's like it focuses on the local government. It states that, like, if you see your fellow American colluding with the British mainland by taking in embargoed tea or whatever, you have to try him in court and punish him. It's like a self-governance structure. But the also side note, they called it the First Continental Congress. I like the word Congress. I like that word. It's a very good phrase, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so the Articles of Association is the precursor to the Declaration of Independence. Okay. And the Declaration of Independence, in my mind, is a precursor to the Articles of the Confederation. And the Articles of the Confederation are like the first Constitution of America. It was Constitution light. It was a soft constitution because first of all, they had issues getting all the states together. It hadn't been done before. And they also didn't want to exert too much power and control because that's what they're fighting against. You have King George III, he has too much power over us. We don't want to go and do the same thing. People are wary of that. We don't want to, take off the mask and then show another mask. If you guys watch a lot of WWE, you know that from what's the guy called? Is he Sting? It doesn't matter. But the Articles of Confederation, they outlined how each state's it's called the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. Disregard that. So the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union basically is the formal document that said we're no longer just 13 independent loose colonies, just we don't know each other now. It's one. It took it to the next level. However, it was still a weak constitution, as in it didn't give too much power to the centralized authority, centralized government, since they couldn't levy taxes, and also states still had a lot of autonomy, a lot, way more than what happened in the Constitution that I'll speak about. But this was a big problem, especially that they couldn't levy taxes. They were essentially just writing IOUs at that point to cover the war debts because they were in a war. They were still in a war with the British. Oh, pardon me, you heard the car noise. They were still in a war with the British at this time. I guess I just said they both think they're British. They were still in a war with the mainland British at this time, and war's expensive. So, not being able to levy taxes is really something that they felt during the period of the Articles of Confederation, and it would really affect how they wrote the Constitution. So, as I said, the Articles of Confederation is a precursor to the Constitution. So, after the war, they won with the help of the French. The mainland Americans won, and they understood that in order for it to work, they had to make a good and fair government structure, and they had to do it quickly because keep in mind, this is after the war. There's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of turmoil, and there's also a lot of uncertainty. No one knows where this is going to go. Is this just, a fling? Is this just, well, the states aren't united anymore. Everyone just goes off and does their own thing. So we have the constitutional conventions where all of the top guys, the big men of each state came together and they studied the best forms of government, the government from ancient Greece, from ancient Rome, the British, all the governments and the societal structures they studied because they wanted to make a good government. And keep in mind, this is important because it hadn't been done before. Before that, you just had, the king, and he kind of had supreme authority, and also his parliament. They had rules, but there were loose rules. It was kind of a vibe, feely thing. They said, no, this is too ambiguous. So, in the Constitution, in making it, one, no kings. They didn't want a tyrannical king. They didn't ever want to experience that again. Two, they wanted it to be fair and free. Three, it had to be structural. So it couldn't just be like George Washington. He was the president, he was a good guy, good guy. They didn't want it to be, well, what happens when you replace George Washington? What if a tyrannical guy goes in? It had to be structural. Another reason that I really like the Constitution is that it talks about federalism. Okay? America's a big place. Even with the 13 colonies, it was still a big place. But also, I didn't speak about this, but the Northwest Ordinance was a document that came around under the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation times that said all the land to the west of the Ohio would be federal territory, and also it kind of outlined how new states would be added to the union. So it was already big and it was only getting bigger. And they knew that you can't have a unitary system like in British, like in, many other Commonwealth countries, because what's good for New York isn't necessarily good for South Carolina, isn't necessarily good for New Hampshire. So I like to think of the United States as a country of countries. That's exactly what it is, 50 states. A state is a political body, especially since each state has so much autonomy and, so much power to govern themselves and what happens in their borders. But I'm skipping ahead. Okay. A big idea. Okay. They just finished fighting against King George III, who they thought was a tyrant, and they didn't want any kind of tyranny. So no one person or no one body of government could have too much power. So they came up with the idea of the separation of powers. That's why there's three branch: the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. And they all were supposed to kind of check each other. None of them is supposed to have too much power. If one has too much power, then the other two were supposed to check it and say, no, 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 unacceptable. And even within this, because it's a bicameral legislature. So within the United States, in the legislative branch, there's two houses. So there's the House of Representatives and there's the Senate. How the Senate works is that it's based on the just one state gets one vote. So each state could kind of vote as one state. And the reason why there is the Senate is because you want the states as a state, as one political body, as one entity, to have a say. And also, you can't do it based on population because keep in mind, the states are still separate and they still have their own autonomy. So you don't want a situation where states just have immense amount of power based on their population. So we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is based on population. So each state has amount of representative based on their population. California has much more representatives than Mississippi because it's a bigger state in terms of population. So that was kind of the balance that they did to ensure that it wouldn't be tyranny of the majority, so that just big states have a bunch of power. And what else? And also so that it would kind of be that more people have more say. Also, I didn't say this, I probably should have said this prior, but the Constitution also stated that there would be a strong, the Federalist Constitution. Okay, we're talking about federalism now, that there would be a strong central government, which now is in Washington, D.C., and it's, the actual government, but also the states would have a lot of autonomy. And they needed a strong central government. They saw that they needed it because getting money during the war before the Constitution was so difficult since the government didn't have the authority to levy taxes. And you also need a strong central government to make sure that each state plays well together. We don't want, you know, South Carolina playing, going to war with New York or anything like that. We want states to play well together. So that's why you needed a strong central government to kind of be like, this is the big boss, this is the referee on top, and all the states are the players, and it controls how they interact with each other. That's what we needed. So, and also another thing, we're gonna go why I love the Constitution now. Another reason that I love the Constitution, also, I wasn't exhaustive at all. I could talk about the Constitution all day. It's actually a very short document when you read it, but the context around it and the creation of it, very interesting. Everyone should read the Constitution. I've said it again. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Everyone should read the Constitution of America. Everyone should read the Declaration of all of that. It's very good. They're short too. Okay. So another reason that I love the Constitution is because it represents compromise, good compromise. Because during the creation of the Constitution, there were two main factions, the Federalist and the Anti Federalist. The Federalist, when the Constitution was made, they were in favor of a strong central government and the current way that the Constitution was, they were happy with. The Anti Federalists didn't really like government, so they wanted to make sure that people, as well as the individual states, had sufficient sovereignty on autonomy. So, like I said, they needed to release the Constitution quickly in order to unify the people and to have a strong government so that you just wouldn't go back to the British or have chaos. So what happened was that they released the Constitution, the ones that the Federalists wanted, but they also released provisions and kind of just like kind of each state kind of released like a memorandum of understanding for the anti-federalists that this is the Constitution, this is the way that it is now, but we will edit it and add some things that you like in order to give people and states more sovereignty and autonomy. And this is where the Bill of Rights come from, like the right to bear arms, the freedom of religion, all of that. That's where that comes from, which it's very good. It's very good. So it represents a strong compromise between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And it also represents compromise in terms of how society was back then. Because keep in mind, the North Atlantic slave trade was still going on in full bloom at the time. So the northern states, they really weren't feeling it. And the southern states, obviously, they loved slavery back then, I guess. And also, a big reason why, also, the reason why the states in the South love slavery is because it's how they made their money. The South was very agricultural. They used slaves as like tractors to till the fields and such. And the reason why the North didn't, they weren't rocking with slavery was because they were already mechanized. And so they thought it was unfair since everyone had to work and go to work in the factories. And also because slavery was always somewhat of cognitive dissonance. It was like they knew that it wasn't right. And based on the Declaration of Independence, it even says, we hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, freedom was a very big and fundamental thing in this new United States of America. So, having slavery was just cognitive dissonance. How can we be free and we be a free society? How can we be a free society and also a society that has in full bloom slavery? So I say that to say that in terms of compromise, the Constitution also represents a big compromise in societal structure because the northern states said, well, to please the southern states, slavery can be legal, but only below the borderline, you know, and slavery wouldn't be legal in any of the new states that would come on and in the Westwood states. And also, after that, they said that a slave, a black Negro slave, would be three-fifths voting rights of a person. And then it went, and after the war, slavery was abolished. So, in order to get the Constitution, just get it out there, they they made compromises. No one got exactly what they wanted, but it was good. And also, another reason is that they realized that nothing's perfect. Okay? We can get more perfect every day, but we could never be perfect. So they understood that the Constitution, as great as it is, it wasn't perfect. So they left a way for it to be edited. These are called amendments. We know this. So, but it couldn't just be whimsy. A new president comes in, he edits the Constitution, or just new people come in and, or it's just, people go into mood swings and they edit the Constitution. It had to be something that everyone was sure of. Like, to edit the Constitution wouldn't just be something you do every day. It has to be like, this is firm. So it required that a lot of representatives, as in the legislature representing the states, and also a lot of the people had to vote like a supermajority, not just a majority, more than a majority, to change the Constitution. So you can change the Constitution, but it's very difficult, and a lot of people has to want it to be changed. So that's another thing that they placed in there. I love that the Constitution represents self governance, because before that, you had the rule of the king, which I've always hated the British monarchy. I could say that because that's why I could never fully respect the British. How can you how can you call someone else king just by virtue of what, did they come from special semen? I'm not doing that. I'm not calling another man king. And they just allow it to happen. That's why, I'm from a Commonwealth country, and in my country, the Constitution says that, well, it's a constitutional monarchy. So it's a democracy, technically, and there's a lot of self governance, but it still says that symbolically, the queen, the king, the monarchy of the British is still like supreme ruler, which that's like the most house nigga, most subservient. That is the most subservient Maxim thing you could do. I can't respect that at all. So I don't like the queen. I don't like the king. I don't respect or recognize any rule. And the OG Americans didn't either. That's why we have the Constitution. But that's my rant. So yeah, That's actually how they built the Constitution. We had the people in America. They felt that the king, first of all, he was tyrannical. He was treating them poorly. Secondly, he had no real legitimacy since he didn't govern them properly, and he was mistreating them, and he didn't ensure, he wasn't helping the governance structure very well of America. So all the top guys in the 13 colonies were like, this is unacceptable. We're not gonna have a king. We're talking about the Constitution. I'm just gonna give you a little recap. So in the beginning, we had the British, and we had the 13 colonies, the OG states in North America, and the British, the King George III, being tyrannical, giving a bunch of taxes that they weren't rocking with. So all the big guys, the prominent men of the states came together in Congress, and they fought the British. They wanted independence, and they came up. This is just an explanation. They came up with the Constitution, and the Constitution outlined how the states would interact with the central government, and it also gave a lot of autonomy to the central government and also a lot of rights to the people. And it also stated how the states would interact with each other and that more states could be added. For example, there was 13, now there's 50. Hopefully there'll be more. And it's the supreme law of the land. Just great. I'm starting to rant, so I'll stop. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you notice, I haven't posted in a while, the few subscribers that I have. I've been really busy. Like and subscribe. I'm a history. If you want to see more kind of history and political stuff, let me know because I want to do the French Revolution too. I haven't, I don't know too much about the French Revolution, but I want to read up on it and get back to you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you didn't, let me know in the comments how I can improve. Uh, if you did, also talk to me in the comments. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, follow me on IG, TikTok. TikTok doesn't like me at all. Uh, what else? That's about it. Check the links in the description. Read my blog, Nico at nicomiller.com. There's a bunch of stuff there. I may make a blog post about this. If I do, I'll leave it in the video description. Yeah.